Sarah traced the worn edges of her favorite mug, the ceramic warm against her fingertips. Outside her small apartment window, rain tapped a steady rhythm, mirroring the anxious beat of her own heart. She was a single mother-to-be, her belly a gentle curve beneath her sweater, a constant reminder of the precious life growing inside her. Every day felt like a tightrope walk, balancing her dwindling savings with the rising cost of baby supplies. She worked hard at the local diner, her feet aching by the end of each shift. But even with all her effort, it felt like she was always just one step behind. She was kind. Everyone said so. Her smile was quick, her eyes full of warmth, even when she was tired. But underneath that kindness was a quiet strength, a determination to make things work, no matter how hard they seemed. She'd faced tough times before, but this felt different. This was about more than just herself now. It was about her baby, a tiny, innocent person who deserved the best. And Sarah worried endlessly about how she would provide it all. The future stretched out before Sarah, a blurry path of unknowns, each step heavy with concern. One dreary afternoon, as the rain still pattered against her window, a thick envelope arrived in her mailbox. It wasn't a bill, nor was it a card from a friend. The return address was from a law firm she didn't recognize, and the paper felt important, stiff and formal. With a slight frown, Sarah tore it open. Her eyes scanned the words, a knot forming in her stomach. The letter spoke of her great-aunt Rose. Great-aunt Rose. The name felt distant, almost like a character from a book. Sarah barely remembered her, a vague memory of a kind, quiet woman from a very long time ago, perhaps at a family gathering when Sarah was just a little girl. They hadn't exchanged letters. Calls the letter, stiff and official, continued to unfold its surprising news. Sarah's eyes widened as she read the words that followed the announcement of her great-aunt's passing. It wasn't just a small sum of money or a piece of old jewelry, as she might have expected from a distant relative. No, the letter stated, quite clearly, that Sarah was the sole inheritor of a property. The Starlight Inn. A motel? Sarah reread the line, her brow furrowed in disbelief. She knew nothing of her great-aunt owning a motel. Her mind raced, trying to conjure any memory of such a place, but came up blank. The letter went on to describe its location, a place called Oak Haven, a quiet, forgotten town nestled far from the city. It sounded like a place time had simply passed by, a detail that both intrigued and slightly unnerved her. The idea was almost funny. Here she was, struggling to pay rent on her tiny apartment, and suddenly she owned a whole motel. A motel. Her laughter was a little shaky, a mix of disbelief and a spark of something new. Hope. Could this truly be real? The detailed address, the name of the lawyer, everything pointed to it being true. The Starlight Inn. The name itself painted a picture in her mind. Faded neon lights, perhaps, and a sense of old-fashioned charm. Oak Haven. She pictured a sleepy main street, perhaps a general store, and maybe a few old cars parked lazily. The town sounded small, far from the hustle and bustle she was used to, which in some ways was a relief. A quiet place might be exactly what she and her baby needed. The letter advised her to contact the lawyer to arrange a visit to the property. Sarah felt a nervous flutter in her stomach, a feeling quite different from her usual worries. This was a new kind of unknown, one that held a strange, exciting promise. Could this be the answer to her prayers? With a deep breath and a mixture of nerves and a tiny spark of hope, Sarah packed a small bag. She arranged for a friend to cover her shifts at the diner and borrowed an old car for the long drive to Oak Haven. The journey was quiet, the landscape slowly changing from busy city streets to rolling green hills, and then, finally, to the sparse, sleepy scenery of a forgotten highway. As she drove into Oakhaven, the town was exactly as she had pictured. Small, peaceful, and seemingly untouched by time. A few old buildings lined the main street, their paint peeling. But there was a charm to them, a quiet beauty. Her stomach fluttered with a blend of fear and excitement. What would the motel be like? Would it be a complete disaster or a hidden gem? Following the directions from the lawyer, Sarah eventually found a faded sign by the side of the road. It read, in looping, once bright letters, "The Starlight Inn." The sign tilted slightly, almost bowing to greet her. She turned onto a gravel driveway, the crunch of stones under the tires sounding loud in the quiet afternoon. The motel came into view, sitting behind a few overgrown bushes. It was indeed old, its paint chipped and dusty, but it wasn't crumbling. There was a long, low building with several doors, each leading to a room. A small office building stood to one side, its windows dark and dusty. The air was still, carrying the scent of old leaves and damp earth. Sarah parked the car and just sat there for a moment, taking it all in. A strange mix of feelings swirled inside her. On one hand, she was nervous. This was a huge undertaking, especially for a single mother-to-be. On the other hand, a stubborn little voice in her heart whispered, "What if? What if this is it? What if this is the start of something good?" She took another deep breath, her hand resting on her belly, and stepped out of the car. The key felt heavy and cold in Sarah's hand as she unlocked the main office door. A musty smell, like old paper and forgotten dust, greeted her. Sunlight struggled to pierce the grimy windows, casting dim, dancing motes of dust in the air. Inside, old furniture sat draped in white sheets, like ghosts waiting for a party that would never come. An ancient desk was covered in a thick layer of dust, and a rotary phone, long silent, sat beside a stack of yellowed ledgers. She walked through the office, her footsteps echoing. Over the next few days, Sarah tackled the daunting task of cleaning. She started with one of the guest rooms, a space that felt less overwhelming than the large, silent office. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight that filtered through the grimy window, and a thick layer of grime covered everything. She pulled back faded curtains, wiped down sticky surfaces, and swept away cobwebs that clung like old lace. It was tiring work, made harder by her growing belly, but she felt a strange sense of purpose. Each scrub, each wipe, was a small step towards bringing the Starlight Inn back to life. As she knelt to scrub a particularly stubborn stain near the corner of the room, her hand brushed against the wooden floorboards. One board felt different. It wasn't as solid as the others. There was a slight give, a tiny wobble. Sarah pressed on it again and heard a faint creak. Her heart gave a little thump. With newfound energy, Sarah pushed harder on the loose floorboard. It lifted slightly. She carefully worked her fingers into the crack, prying the old wood up. It came away with a soft groan, revealing a dark, dusty space underneath. Her breath hitched. Tucked away in the hidden hollow was a box. Not just any box, but an old wooden one, dark with age and smoothed by time. It was small enough to hold in her two hands, perhaps the size of a shoebox, but flatter. Its surface was carved with simple, elegant patterns that were hard to make out under the layer of dust. A rusty metal clasp held it shut, with a tiny, old-fashioned padlock firmly fastened. Sarah carefully reached into the space and pulled the box out. It felt lighter than she expected, but still held a sense of mystery. She brushed away the dust, revealing the intricate carvings of flowers and swirling lines. The wood was warm beneath her fingers, as if it still held a faint memory of someone else's touch. A small keyhole in the padlock stared back at her, promising secrets. Who would hide a box like this? And why? Her great-aunt Rose was a quiet woman, not someone Sarah imagined hiding treasures in floorboards. A strange excitement bubbled up inside her, pushing away the exhaustion of cleaning. This was more than just an old box. It felt like a puzzle, a whisper from the past. Sarah turned the box over in her hands, searching for any clue, any way to open it without a key. But the padlock was sturdy, designed to keep its contents safe. She knew she needed to find that key. Sarah sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, the old wooden box resting carefully on her lap. She gently ran her fingers over the small padlock, testing it, hoping it might somehow spring open with a touch. It didn't. She tried wiggling the clasp, even tapping it lightly, but the lock held firm. She knew better than to try to force it open. That would surely damage the beautiful old box. A key, she murmured to herself. There must be a key. Her eyes swept around the room, now cleaner than it had been, but still full of nooks and crannies. She started her search systematically, moving from one piece of furniture to the next. She checked under the mattress, inside the empty closet, and behind the faded artwork on the walls. Nothing. Her gaze fell upon an old nightstand by the bed. It had a single small drawer. Sarah pulled at the tarnished brass handle, and with a protesting groan, the drawer slid open. Inside, it was mostly empty, save for a few crumbs of dust and a small, forgotten button. But then, tucked right into the back corner, almost hidden by the dust, something tiny glinted. It was a key, a very small, delicate key made of dark, aged metal. It had a simple design, but its size seemed just right for the padlock on the box. A thrill shot through Sarah. She carefully picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly with anticipation. Could it be this easy? Could her great-aunt Rose have left it so close? With the tiny key in hand, Sarah turned back to the box. Her heart beat a little faster. She carefully inserted the key into the padlock's small hole. It slid in smoothly. With a gentle turn, she heard a soft, satisfying click. The padlock sprang open, and the rusty clasp released its hold. Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers hovering over the lid. What secrets had her great-aunt Rose hidden inside this mysterious box? With a soft click, the padlock opened. Sarah's fingers trembled as she slowly lifted the lid of the wooden box. A faint, sweet scent, like dried flowers and old paper, wafted up to her. Inside, nestled carefully on a bed of faded silk, lay 3 items. The first was a stack of letters, tied together with a thin, brittle ribbon that crumbled slightly when she touched it. The paper was yellowed with age, and the handwriting, though elegant, was unfamiliar. She could just make out a date on the top letter, many, many years ago. Beneath the letters, a small, faded photograph peeked out. Sarah picked it up gently. It showed a young woman, smiling softly, her hair styled in a way that was long out of fashion. Her eyes were kind, and there was a hint of a playful sparkle in them. Sarah knew somehow that this was her great-aunt Rose in her younger days. The woman in the photo looked happy, full of life, a stark contrast to the distant, quiet image Sarah held in her memories. And finally, at the very bottom, nestled deeper in the silk, was a locket. It was a truly beautiful piece, made of dark antique silver, intricately carved with tiny roses and vines. It felt cool and smooth in her palm, much heavier than she expected. Sarah carefully opened it. Inside, on one side, was another tiny, even more faded photograph, too small to clearly see. The other side was empty, ready for another memory. Sarah sat there, holding these pieces of the past, the letters, the photo of a young Rose, and the exquisite locket. Each item felt like a tiny window into a life she barely knew, a life that was now reaching out to her across time. Her great-aunt Rose, the quiet woman, had left her more than just an old motel. She had left her a mystery, a story waiting to be told. Sarah's heart beat with a new kind of excitement. She couldn't wait to read those letters. With the locket and photo placed carefully beside her, Sarah untied the brittle ribbon from the stack of letters. The first letter, dated many decades ago, began with a simple, warm greeting. "My dearest Eleanor." Eleanor. So, her great-aunt Rose had a secret friend. Sarah felt a pang of curiosity. Who was Eleanor, and why had these letters been hidden away? Sarah smoothed the fragile paper and began to read. Great-aunt Rose's handwriting was elegant, with graceful loops and curls, but easy to understand. The first few letters spoke of everyday life in Oakhaven, painting a picture of a bustling little town, quite different from the quiet place Sarah had driven through. Rose wrote about the motel, the Starlight Inn, with such fondness, describing the different guests who passed through its doors. She spoke of the joy she found in helping people, even in small ways. As Sarah read on, the letters took a more personal turn. Rose shared her dreams, her worries, and her observations about the world. She wrote of secrets, not in a dark way, but as if they were precious stories to be guarded. She hinted at certain special places within the motel, places that held more than just old furniture. Rose seemed to have a playful way of hinting at things, never fully explaining, but always suggesting there was more to discover. Sarah felt as if she were sitting right there with her great-aunt, listening to her talk. Rose was clearly a woman of deep feelings and sharp wit, far more complex than the quiet memories Sarah held. These weren't just letters. They were a roadmap, a treasure hunt disguised as friendly correspondence. As Sarah devoured more of the letters, the hints grew clearer. Great-aunt Rose wrote about the whispers of the walls and the secrets held by the old oak, referring, Sarah guessed, to the sturdy tree outside the motel office. She spoke of things more precious than gold, hidden in plain sight, for those with eyes to see. One letter in particular made Sarah's heart pound. Rose described a time when the motel faced tough financial struggles, similar to Sarah's own worries. But then she wrote about a lucky discovery that saved everything. She mentioned the old ledger's silent promise and the hidden vault where memories and fortunes sleep. It wasn't just a quaint turn of phrase. It sounded like a literal hidden vault, a place where valuables might be stored. Another letter spoke of a secret passage, known only to a trusted few, leading to a room of forgotten stories. The more Sarah read, the more the Starlight Inn transformed in her mind from a dusty old building into a place teeming with hidden possibilities. It wasn't just about fixing up a motel anymore. It was about uncovering a legacy, a mystery that her great-aunt had carefully woven into the very fabric of the building. The thought of actual hidden treasures, perhaps even money or valuable items, sent a jolt of pure excitement through Sarah. It wasn't greed, but a sudden surge of hope. As Sarah delved deeper into the letters, a clearer picture of her great-aunt Rose began to form. Rose wasn't just a keeper of secrets and hidden treasures. She was a deeply kind and caring woman. Many of her letters spoke of guests at the Starlight Inn who were in trouble or who needed a helping hand. Rose often mentioned offering them a free room, a warm meal, or a listening ear. She wrote about helping a young family escape a bad situation and sheltering someone who had nowhere else to go. It became clear that the secrets Rose kept weren't just about hidden wealth, but also about protecting people. She spoke of disguising identities, of helping people disappear when they needed to, and of creating safe havens within the motel walls. Sometimes, Rose wrote to Eleanor, the greatest treasure is a new beginning, and the greatest gift is a safe place to find it. She was a quiet hero, using her motel not just as a business, but as a sanctuary. Sarah felt a profound sense of respect for her great-aunt. Rose had been a woman of great compassion, someone who understood what it meant to struggle and who used what she had to help others. The thought of her great-aunt protecting people, creating secret spaces for those in need, made Sarah's heart swell. It explained why the hidden floorboard, the secret passages, and the hidden rooms existed. They weren't just for hiding treasures. They were for hiding people, for keeping their stories safe. Sarah realized that the motel held not just old things, but also the echoes of kindness and bravery. This discovery made the idea of restoring the Starlight Inn even more meaningful. She wasn't just fixing a building, she was honoring a legacy of care and protection, who secretly helped many people by creating safe havens within her motel walls. Knowing this, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. With the letters as her guide, she began to explore the Starlight Inn with a keen eye, no longer just cleaning, but searching. The motel had transformed from a burden into a fascinating puzzle, each dusty corner potentially holding a piece of her great-aunt's story. She revisited the guest room where she found the first box, tapping along the walls, looking for any subtle changes in the plaster or wood. She checked behind the old dresser, under the window sills, and even carefully examined the ceiling. Rose's hints about whispers of the walls echoed in her mind. Next, Sarah moved to the motel office, the place Rose had managed for so many years. The old ledger's silent promise was a clue she couldn't ignore. She carefully went through the stack of yellowed ledgers, not looking for numbers, but for anything unusual. She ran her hands along the spines of old books on a dusty shelf, searching for a loose cover or a hidden compartment. The secrets held by the old oak made her glance often out the window, wondering if there was something about the ancient tree outside that held a key. Sarah spent hours in this new kind of treasure hunt. It was slow work, requiring patience and a sharp eye. Her great-aunt Rose had been clever, hiding things in plain sight or in places that would only be found by someone truly looking for them, someone who understood the spirit of the Starlight Inn. As she searched, Sarah felt a connection to Rose, almost as if her great-aunt was there with her, guiding her. This wasn't just about finding things. It was about understanding the heart of the motel and the woman who had loved it so much. Sarah's careful exploration led her back to the dusty old office. One particular letter from great-aunt Rose kept nagging at her, the one that spoke of a secret passage known only to a trusted few. Rose had mentioned it was behind the stories, which Sarah now understood to mean behind the bookshelf. She stood before the tall, heavy wooden bookshelf that lined one wall of the office. It was filled with old, forgotten books, their covers faded and spines cracked. Sarah ran her hand along the shelves, feeling for anything loose, any hidden button or lever. She tried pushing on various books, imagining them as secret switches in a movie. Nothing happened. Then, She remembered another line from Rose's letters. The oldest tale often holds the deepest truth. Sarah looked at the books again, searching for the oldest, most worn volume. Her fingers landed on a thick, leather-bound book with no title, its pages yellowed and brittle. It was tucked away on a lower shelf, almost hidden by the books around it. With a surge of excitement, Sarah pulled the old book forward. As she did, she heard a soft, mechanical click. The section of the bookshelf, instead of just the book, began to slowly, silently swing inward like a secret door. Her jaw dropped. It was real. A hidden passage, just as her great-aunt had described. A narrow, dark opening appeared behind the moving bookshelf, revealing a shadowy space beyond. The air that wafted out was cool and still, carrying the scent of old wood and earth, a deeper, older scent that promised untold stories. Sarah hesitated for only a moment. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped into the darkness. She fumbled for her phone, turning on its flashlight, and illuminated the narrow passage. It was a short hallway, barely wide enough for her to turn around, with rough-hewn wooden walls. The passage opened into a small, hidden room. It was dusty, but surprisingly well-preserved. Unlike the rest of the motel, this room felt like a time capsule, untouched by the decades. Along one wall, neatly stacked, were old records, guest ledgers, property deeds, and bundles of receipts, all tied with faded string. On a small, sturdy table in the center, a collection of rolled-up maps lay scattered. Sarah gently unrolled one, revealing a detailed map of Oakhaven and the surrounding area, with certain properties circled in red ink. But what truly caught her eye was in the corner. There, tucked away and partially covered by a canvas sheet, was another chest. This one was much larger and heavier than the small wooden box she'd found earlier. It was made of dark, sturdy wood, banded with tarnished metal. Its lock was much more substantial than the tiny one on the first box, a heavy, old-fashioned mechanism that seemed to defy any easy opening. Sarah tried the small key from the nightstand, but it was far too small. This chest needed a different key. She remembered the beautiful antique locket she had found in the first wooden box. It was a treasure in itself. With its intricate carvings and the tiny, faded photograph inside. She had opened it before, but hadn't looked at it very closely. Now, she pulled it from her pocket, her mind racing. Rose had been so clever with her hiding places. Could the locket hold the key? She carefully examined the beautiful piece of jewelry. The tiny, faded photograph inside was glued securely, but as she ran her finger along the edge of the other, empty side, she felt a slight ridge. With a delicate touch, she pressed. A tiny compartment sprang open, revealing not a new photo, but a small, ornate silver key, tucked perfectly inside. Her breath caught in her throat. Rose, you clever woman. This was it. This had to be the key for the larger chest. With trembling hands, Sarah walked back to the heavy wooden chest. She inserted the silver key into the lock. It fit perfectly. With a turn, hidden inside the locket, which unlocked the heavy chest with a satisfying click. Sarah slowly lifted the heavy. Sarah stared at the contents of the chest, her mind reeling. The sparkle of the jewels, the gleam of the old coins, the weight of the papers in her hands. It was all almost too much to take in. She had come to Oakhaven feeling lost and worried, burdened by the future. Now, she held the key to a completely different path. The important papers, especially the property deeds, were the most shocking. They showed that her great-aunt Rose owned not just the Starlight Inn, but also several other plots of land around Oakhaven, properties that, according to the maps and ledgers, were incredibly valuable. Rose had been a shrewd businesswoman, quietly buying up land over the decades, knowing its worth would grow. This wasn't just a small inheritance, it was a fortune. Sarah sank onto the floor, the heavy chest open before her. Tears pricked her eyes, but these were tears of relief, of overwhelming gratitude. Her great-aunt Rose, whom she barely knew, had left her more than just a dusty motel. She had left her a way out of her worries, a foundation upon which to build a truly wonderful new life. The motel, once a symbol of a daunting task, now felt like a gift, a promise. She thought of her baby, due soon. No more struggling, no more endless worry about how she would provide. Rose had ensured that Sarah and her child would be safe, secure, and have every opportunity. It was a powerful, comforting realization. Rose hadn't just left her money and property. She had left her freedom and a future brighter than Sarah had ever dared to dream. The Starlight Inn wasn't just a building. It was a legacy of love, hidden and waiting to be found. With the weight of her great-aunt's incredible gift settling in her heart, Sarah knew exactly what she had to do. The Starlight Inn, once a symbol of endless work and uncertainty, now shone with possibility. She wouldn't sell the land or the motel. Instead, she would honor Rose's legacy by bringing the inn back to life, making it a place of welcome and comfort, just as her great-aunt had. The valuable coins and jewels would provide the funds needed to restore the motel. She pictured fresh paint, new linens, and a welcoming glow from the Starlight Inn sign. She would fix the leaky roofs, mend the broken windows, and create beautiful, clean rooms where travelers could rest. The old records and maps would help her understand the history of the property and the town, allowing her to connect even more deeply with Rose's vision. This wasn't just about fixing a building. It was about building a future, a bright future for herself and for her baby. She imagined her child growing up in Oakhaven, a peaceful town, surrounded by the history and kindness that Rose had woven Sarah's plan to restore. The Starlight Inn quickly spread through the small town of Oakhaven. News travels fast in quiet places, and the story of the young woman inheriting the old motel and finding hidden treasures was the most exciting thing to happen in years. People remembered Great-Aunt Rose with fondness, recalling her kindness and generosity. Soon, Sarah found herself with unexpected visitors. Old Mr. Henderson, whose family had run the hardware store for generations, stopped by with a pickup truck full of lumber and tools. "Rose was a good woman," he said, tipping his hat. "Helped my folks out when times were tough. We'd be honored to help her kin fix up this place." Mrs. Gable, a spry woman with bright eyes, brought over fresh-baked cookies and a list of local folks who were good with a paintbrush or knew how to mend a leaky faucet. "Rose always had a smile for everyone," she chirped. "The Starlight Inn used to be the heart of this town. We'd love to see it shine again." Soon, the dusty motel was bustling with activity. Men and women from Oakhaven, young and old, came to lend a hand. Some remembered staying at the inn as children. Others knew Rose from her quiet kindness. Seeing the community rally around the Starlight Inn, all for the memory of her great-aunt Rose, filled Sarah with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just about the treasures anymore. It was about the heart of Oakhaven, and the lasting good Rose had done with the help of the eager townspeople and the funds from Rose's hidden treasures. The Starlight Inn underwent a wonderful transformation. The dusty, run-down rooms were filled with new life. Fresh paint in soft, welcoming colors replaced the faded, peeling walls. Cozy beds with crisp, clean linens invited weary travelers. The old neon sign, once dim and flickering, now glowed brightly, casting a warm, inviting light across the newly paved driveway. The motel became more than just a place to sleep. It became a hub of activity for Oak Haven. The old office was transformed into a charming reception area and a small cafe, where Sarah served coffee and homemade pastries. Townspeople gathered there in the mornings, chatting and laughing, bringing a cheerful buzz that had been missing for years. Travelers, drawn by the motel's new look and the friendly atmosphere, started stopping again. The rooms were often full, and the sound of children playing outside filled the air. The Starlight Inn truly became a happy, bustling place once more. It brought new jobs to Oak Haven, as Sarah hired locals to help run the motel and cafe. It also brought new visitors who explored the town's small shops and restaurants, breathing new life into the quiet community. The old motel, once forgotten, was now the shining star of Oak Haven, a beacon of warmth and welcome. Sarah often thought of Rose, smiling, knowing that her great-aunt would have loved to see the inn so full of joy and people. Restored, transforming into a bustling, happy place that brought joy and new life to the town of Oak Haven. Time seemed to fly by, filled with hard work, laughter, and the growing sense of community. And then, one beautiful spring morning, Sarah's baby arrived. She named her Rose after the great-aunt who had changed her life so completely. Baby Rose was healthy and bright, her tiny fingers wrapping around Sarah's with a strength that mirrored her mother's own. Sarah held her daughter, looking out at the now vibrant Starlight Inn, its sign glowing even in the daytime, and felt a peace she had never known. No longer was she a struggling single mother-to-be, burdened by worries about the future. She was Sarah, owner of the